guys, it's God Bars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 99th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. When it comes to my personal experience with hip-hop, at least when I was younger and hadn't gone out of my way to listen to a single album yet, let alone delved into any old-school rappers' discographies, there were still a handful of names I was somewhat familiar with just from hearing them throughout my childhood. While I wouldn't have been able to separate them with a gun to my head at that age, I had at least heard names like Tupac, Biggie Smalls, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, and the legendary group that we're going to focus on today, Cypress Hill. Speaking of Snoop, the members of Cypress Hill shared a similar experience to him in the way their fame and influence crossed over from hip hop to the weed smoking community in general. But similar to how I've mentioned figures like Snoop and especially Redman being much more lethal MCs than some casual fans give them credit for, Cypress Hill is much more than a stoner group with some weed anthems. You'd be pretty hard pressed to find many of any other artists who focus on weed as a constant main topic and theme, but deliver it with a dark, sinister, bass rattling sound. The instrumentals are grimy and hard hitting all across their work, yet the sample material can switch to cerebral and trippy in a second. A couple personnel changes have occurred across the years, but at the time of their stellar third album here, Cypress Hill was made up of Be Real, Sendog, DJ Muggs, and percussionist Eric Bobo. MCs Be Real and Sendog both had dope voices and unique flows that showed their West Coast background while still displaying a clear reverence for the East Coast hip hop pioneers. While those two lyrically set the tone for virtually all the Cypress Hill albums, DJ Muggs had such a forward thinking and idiosyncratic production style, it really took their LPs to the next level, and at times I'd argue even above and beyond their contemporaries. He was a massive influence on the modern underground scene that's full of minimal and grimy beats, which he plays a direct hand in currently as well, by staying insanely active to this day and collaborating with the likes of Rock Marciano, Ransom, Rome Streets, and the various Griselda members. He even did an installment of his classic Soul Assassin series where he puts top old school names like Slick Rick and Method Man alongside newer contemporary MCs like Boldy James and Freddie Gibbs. He even has a track on here featuring both Be Real and Ice Cube, which is pretty dope considering they had a pretty serious beef going on for a while in the 90s with some pretty heavy disses thrown in both directions. Speaking of which, Be Real's classic diss track towards Cube and one half of the rest of Westside Connection turns up on here, and it's literally in a playlist I made titled Legendary Diss Tracks, which I believe is open and available for anyone to access on Apple Music. So I'll leave a link for that down in the description if you want to check out some of my personal favorite back and forths in hip hop. I think the fact that Muggs and the rest of the crew helped influence modern rap to such a big degree makes albums like Temples of Boom here sound even more fresh and forward thinking in retrospect. The dusty, warped treatment of samples hasn't aged a day, and it's why so many rappers go to him for beats 30 years into his career, opposed to a younger, more accessible producer who could cheaply imitate the sound. While their debut album was still pretty groundbreaking and ahead of its time and features tons of classic jams, and their follow-up to that, Black Sunday, was easily their most successful album. For me, Temples of Boom is where they really succeeded in creating a dark, enveloping world through sound. You have to at least partially contribute this to percussionist Eric Bobo, as he began working with the group around the conception of this LP, which is also when he officially became a member. While they displayed their influence for dark and heavy genres of music on the previous albums, the cool-ass metal-inspired cover helped separate them from other more grimy hip-hop acts and helped show millions of kids in the ghetto that it didn't have to be lame to like music other than what your friends listen to, and there's no reason to be ashamed or embarrassed of that. They were also the first Latino hip-hop act to achieve platinum and multi-platinum status, and there's no telling how many young MCs and producers who hadn't felt very represented in the genre up until that point were inspired to follow their passions or take them more seriously. This outreach that Cypress Hill had stretched from gang members and underprivileged people of color to doofy white black metal fans and even the more hippie-ish weed-smoking group that goes to every festival on the circuit. They do all of that while still keeping their integrity as not just people and musical creatives, but as pioneers of hip-hop itself. There aren't many acts from the 80s to the 2000s that were able to make rap rock work, and even the ones that were successful almost never age well and almost always come off as corny now. But while the music on most Cypress Hill songs doesn't scream rock, they've always had a very punk attitude and feel, in my opinion, and it's pretty hard for any form of rock to be mentioned in the same sentence as any type of 90s rap, and it isn't in disdain. But it is worth mentioning Sendog fronted a metal band himself, and Cypress Hill has done a couple heavier and experimental songs that were more on the rock side. These guys were able to walk that tightrope act, and I think the addition of a true blue percussionist added a layer that the previous two albums hadn't found yet. There's beats on here that you've probably heard multiple artists sample since this LP's release in 1995, and again, while DJ Muggs is largely responsible for that sound, there were other legends who helped pioneer this dark style of production, and arguably none of them were more essential than RZA of Wu-Tang Clan. I bring him up not just due to his impact on grimy, minimal beat making, but he's actually the only name besides DJ Muggs to provide an instrumental for Temples of Boom, though it is only one track. He does make a killer guest appearance though, as does fellow Wu-Tang member U-God, but that's pretty much it in the way of features. However, you really don't need much more than that, since Be Real is at the helm for the majority of the project, and I bet he could make it pretty far if you did a bracket of hip hop's most unique and instantly recognizable voices. Not to mention the Kill a Hill track that features RZA and U-God is dope enough to make up for the lack of any other guest verses. Cypress Hill also does just as good a job capturing the negative aspects of always being high, delving into the anxiety and paranoia that we can accentuate and sometimes even create. There's many moments where they make it blatantly clear that this isn't some happy-go-lucky, pass the joint hour. Even the high points can often have purposely unsettling undertones. For honorable mentions this time around, I think I'd go with Boom Biddy Bye Bye, Spark Another Owl, Throw Your Set in the Air, Stoned Raiders, Make a Move, California, Strictly Hip Hop, and Let It Rain. My three favorite songs for this one would have to be Illusions, Red Light Visions, and No Rest for the Wicked. Thank you for watching my 99th video. It's insane that we're about to hit number 100, and I really appreciate anyone who stuck around and watched through all this garbage. Just like for my 50th video, I don't really have anything too special planned outside of doing another powerhouse that I consider very essential to hip hop. So tune in for that one, and if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite songs are off this classic with one of my favorite album covers in the genre. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.